So today we are going to be learning about a composer of the medieval period who is very unique to that time frame. Keep in mind the medieval period stretches from the year 450 to 1450, which is a huge span of time. And in a lot of cases, we don't know a lot about what happened toward the earlier end of that time frame just because we don't have a lot of written records about it. However, the person we're going to read about today, we do happen to know quite a bit about. I'm going to be using this page as my guide, and you will have this as well. So if you prefer to just kind of read it along with me or read it quietly on your own, that is up to you. But I'm going to do this for those of you who appreciate hearing it instead of having to read it on your own. So today we're going to be learning about Hildegard von Bingen. She was born in the year 1098 and she died in 1179, and she's from Germany. She was a composer of medieval music during that medieval time period, and her name is Hildegard von Bingen because von Bingen just means from Bingen, and Bingen was the city that she lived the nearest to. So people back then would have just probably called her by her first name. And even though she lived approximately 900 years ago, we actually know a great deal about her. Through her life, she kept journals and corresponded extensively with other people. Her father and her mother were both nobility, and so she was kind of from an upper class family. She was their 10th child, and tradition required that the 10th child would be dedicated to the church. Now, I know some of you maybe have been baptized or dedicated to God, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about like given to the church. So when Hildegard was 8, her parents sent her to a convent, which was part of a monastery. And there she joined a religious order led by a nun known as Hutta of Spanheim, who many believed was a psychic or a mystic. And Hildegard became a nun, which is in the Catholic Church, at age 15. Now, when Hutta died in 1136, and remember, she was the one that was leading that order, Hildegard succeeded her as the mother superior of the order. So now Hildegard is in charge. And she was only 38 years old. And within a few years from then, she claimed to have visions from God. And eventually, she began writing down those visions. And the church considered her a prophetess and a visionary. And lots of church members began to seek her advice on personal and religious matters. Sometime between 1147 and 1150, Hildegard founded a new monastery near Rudesheim, Germany, and she wrote at great length on many subjects, and she exchanged correspondence with popes and kings and dukes and archbishops and politicians, and many important and powerful men consulted her on matters of church and state. You need to understand that that was not usual for men to listen to what a woman would have to say, and yet they sought her out and asked her advice on these things. She also wrote poems and set at least 77 of them to music. During Hildegard's time, music for the church consisted of chants, which were sung by male monks. Hildegard, however, composed her music to be sung by the nuns of her order. No other composer of that time period wrote music for female voices. So that is how she is really distinctive and different. Hildegard seemed to write endlessly, both music and text. She wrote an encyclopedia describing various herbal medicines she developed. This caused people to visit her to ask her to prescribe various herbs for their illnesses. She wrote biographies of several saints. She wrote numerous religious books, and she even wrote a play. She composed most of her music between 1150 and 1160, so just that 10-year span there. At the age of 60, Hildegard began traveling and preaching throughout Germany, and she was controversial during her lifetime. She claimed to have mystical powers, but not everyone believed her. And in 1165, she moved her order of nuns to Bingen, Germany. And after her death at age 81, which by the way was super old for that time frame, right now being 81 is sort of no big deal. I mean, lots of people live to be 81. Back then, I mean, that was unbelievable. People usually died probably in their maybe 40s or 50s. But after she died, there were several efforts to canonize her. That does not mean put her in a canon and shoot her out. That means to make her a saint in the Catholic Church. But all the efforts failed to canonize her, so they didn't. Hildegard was not educated in the true sense of the word. All of her knowledge came from her religious training. Her music is known as plain song chant, the type of music sung in churches during the Middle Ages. But Hildegard's compositions are unique because they were written for female voices. She often claimed that she received her music and her writings directly from God. And because of her many writings, Hildegard is considered one of the greatest women of the Middle Ages. So that gives you kind of an overview of Hildegard. And what you're going to do is there's going to be a number of questions that I'm going to have you answer on a separate form. You have my permission to either watch back through what I just said, or you can use the sheet that you have to answer those questions that are on the Google form, just to make sure that you're absorbing this information and paying attention. I also have put in there kind of a timeline, and there will be some questions from this timeline on your Google form, which I'm not going to include in what I'm talking about right now, but you can read it on your own and kind of get a feel for that. So that's Hildegard von Bingen. And then we're going to be listening to a little bit of her music today as well, and I will give you a separate video about that. Stay tuned.